Everyone expected the bride to walk down the aisle that morning. Instead,
Sophia?
she disappeared without a trace.
Sophia?
The wedding guests waited in silence. The groom stood beneath a beautiful arch of white roses, smiling nervously as he checked his watch for what felt like the 100th time. The musicians continued playing soft violin music, hoping the delay was nothing more than ordinary wedding nerves. Then the wedding planner walked toward him. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her face had turned pale, and her hands trembled as she held a single white envelope. In that moment, she knew two lives were about to change forever. But what no one at that wedding knew was that the woman carrying the letter had spent the last 3 years secretly in love with the groom. And before the day was over, a hidden truth would come to light that none of them could have imagined. Lena Adeyemi had built her reputation as one of the finest wedding planners in Lagos. At only 28 years old, she had organized dozens of unforgettable weddings. Couples admired her attention to detail. Families trusted her completely. Vendors loved working with her because she stayed calm even when everything around her seemed to fall apart. People often joked that if Lena planned your wedding, nothing could possibly go wrong. She always smiled whenever she heard that. But deep inside, she knew that perfection was only something people saw on the outside. Every beautiful wedding she created reminded her of one thing she believed she would never have: a love story of her own. 3 years earlier, Lena had met Ethan Okafor during a charity fundraising event. She expected another wealthy businessman who would bark orders and leave the hard work to everyone else. Instead, Ethan surprised her. He thanked every volunteer personally. He helped carry heavy boxes without being asked. He remembered the names of the cleaners, security guards, and waiters. When one elderly volunteer looked exhausted, Ethan quietly offered him a chair and a bottle of water before continuing with the event. Those small moments stayed with Lena long after the evening ended. Over the following months, they worked together on more charity projects. Sometimes they spent hours discussing event ideas. Other times they laughed over small mistakes that happened during preparations. Ethan treated Lena as an equal, respecting her ideas and always appreciating her hard work. Without realizing it, Lena slowly fell in love. It wasn't because Ethan was successful. It wasn't because he was handsome. It was because he had a kind heart. But she never allowed herself to say a single word about her feelings. She believed that love should never interfere with professionalism. Besides, Ethan had never given her a reason to think he saw her as anything more than a trusted friend. So she locked her feelings away and focused on her career. Everything changed one quiet evening after another successful charity event. As they packed away the decorations, Ethan smiled at her with excitement she had never seen before. "Lena," he said, "I finally met someone." His eyes sparkled with happiness. "I think she's the woman I'm going to marry." For a moment, Lena forgot how to breathe. It felt as if every sound around her disappeared. Her heart broke silently inside her chest. But years of hiding her emotions had taught her how to smile through pain. She congratulated him warmly. Ethan thanked her, completely unaware of the tears she would cry later that night after returning home. A few weeks passed. Then Ethan called her again. "I have another project for you," he said cheerfully. "What is it?" Lena asked. "I want you to plan my wedding." She closed her eyes. Every part of her wanted to refuse. Planning the wedding of the man she secretly loved sounded like the hardest thing she could ever do. But she also knew she couldn't let him down. After taking a long, steady breath, she accepted. For the next 6 months, Lena poured every ounce of her talent into creating Ethan's dream wedding. She personally selected thousands of white roses. She designed the lakeside ceremony. She worked late into the night, choosing music, decorations, and lighting that would make the day unforgettable. During those months, she also got to know Ethan's fiancée, Sophia. Sophia was beautiful, polite, and always respectful. Yet something about her never felt quite right. Whenever Ethan talked excitedly about their future together, Sophia smiled. But her smile never reached her eyes. Sometimes Lena caught her staring silently through the windows during planning meetings. Other times, she seemed distracted, as though her mind was somewhere far away. Whenever Lena asked if everything was all right, Sophia would quickly smile and say she was simply nervous. Lena believed her. After all, almost every bride experienced pre-wedding anxiety. Or so she thought. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The Royal Lakeside Event Center looked breathtaking beneath the bright Lagos morning sun. Elegant flower arrangements lined the aisle. Crystal decorations sparkled beside the peaceful lake. Guests arrived wearing colorful traditional attire and elegant suits, filling the gardens with laughter and excitement. Everything was perfect, exactly as Lena had planned. She checked her watch. It was almost time for the ceremony. Taking one final look around the venue, she smiled proudly before walking toward the bridal suite. She knocked gently on the white door. Sophia? No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Slowly, she pushed the door open. The room was silent.
Timmy and Carmel.
The wedding dress still hung beside the mirror.
Oh no.
The bouquet.
Where is she? I can't find her anywhere. She's missing.
The makeup brushes lay
Sophia?
untouched on the vanity. But the bride was gone.
Everyone is
sitting quietly on the dressing table was a single white envelope with just 2 words written across the front. For Ethan. Lena's heartbeat echoed in her ears as she stared at the white envelope resting on the vanity. For a moment, she hoped there was a simple explanation. Maybe Sophia had stepped outside for fresh air. Maybe she was in another room, trying to calm her nerves. But deep down, Lena knew something was terribly wrong. The room told its own story. Sophia's wedding dress was still hanging neatly beside the mirror. Her jewelry lay untouched on the table. Her phone rested beside the makeup brushes. No bride would leave for her own wedding without her phone. Lena slowly picked up the envelope. Written across the front, in neat handwriting, were 2 simple words. For Ethan. Her hands trembled. Whatever was inside could change everything. She took one last look around the room before hurrying toward the ceremony grounds. Outside, the celebration was still alive. Guests laughed as photographers captured family pictures beneath the flower arches. Children chased one another across the green lawn, while waiters served fresh drinks. The violinist played a beautiful love song that floated across the lake. At the center of it all stood Ethan. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, he looked calm but excited. Every few seconds, he glanced toward the bridal suite, waiting for the moment Sophia would appear. When he saw Lena walking toward him, he smiled. "There you are," he said. "Is she ready?" Lena tried to answer, but the words caught in her throat. Her silence made Ethan's smile disappear. "Lena," he stepped closer. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. I can't find Sophia." Ethan laughed nervously. "Very funny." Lena didn't smile. "I've searched the bridal suite, the garden, the hallway, the parking area. She's nowhere." The color drained from Ethan's face. "What do you mean she's nowhere?" "I mean," Lena struggled to speak. "She's gone." For several seconds, Ethan simply stared at her. Then he walked past her toward the bridal suite. Lena followed closely behind. He searched every room himself. He opened every door. He called Sophia's name again and again. Nothing. When he picked up her phone from the dressing table, reality finally began to sink in. His hands started shaking. Why would she leave her phone? Lena had no answer. As they returned outside, the delay had become impossible to ignore. The guests began whispering. "Has something happened? Why hasn't the ceremony started? Is the bride all right?" Sophia's mother hurried toward them, her elegant green lace dress flowing behind her. She smiled nervously. "Is everything okay?" Ethan couldn't speak. Lena answered quietly. "We can't find Sophia." Mrs. Harper frowned. "What do you mean?" "I spoke to her less than an hour ago." Lena gently shook her head. "She's disappeared." The older woman's eyes widened. Without another word, she rushed toward the bridal suite. Lena immediately turned to her team. "Daniel, search every parking area." Daniel nodded and ran. "Rachel, check the lakeside paths and the hotel." Rachel grabbed her radio and hurried away. Within minutes, security guards, hotel staff, photographers, and family members joined the search. The beautiful wedding slowly transformed into complete confusion. The violin music stopped. Guests stood from their seats. Some called Sophia's number over and over. Others searched nearby streets. Every minute that passed made the silence feel heavier. Nearly 30 minutes later, Daniel returned. He was breathing hard. We searched everywhere. Nothing. Rachel arrived moments later. No sign of her. Ethan lowered his head. His dream wedding was slipping away before his eyes. Then Lena remembered the envelope still clutched in her hand. She looked at Ethan. "I found this in Sophia's room." He stared at it. His name was written across the front. Slowly, he accepted the envelope. The entire garden fell silent. Even the children stopped playing. Every pair of eyes focused on Ethan as he carefully unfolded the letter. His eyes moved across the first sentence. Immediately, his breathing changed. He swallowed hard before reading aloud. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I wanted to love you the way you deserved." A tear rolled down his cheek. "I tried every day to convince myself that marrying you was the right thing to do." He paused, struggling to continue. "But my heart belongs to someone else." Gasps spread through the crowd. Mrs. Harper covered her mouth in shock. Several guests looked at one another in disbelief. Ethan continued reading, though every word seemed heavier than the last. "If I stand beside you today, I'll spend the rest of my life pretending. You deserve someone who wakes up every morning choosing you without hesitation. I'm not that person. I'm sorry for hurting you. Please forgive me." The letter slipped from Ethan's fingers and drifted onto the grass. He stood perfectly still. The man who had arrived that morning filled with hope now looked completely broken. The smiling groom had disappeared. In his place stood a man trying to understand how the happiest day of his life had become his greatest heartbreak. Lena wanted to comfort him. She wanted to tell him that none of this was his fault. She wanted to stand beside him until the pain passed. But she stayed silent, because this wasn't her moment. This was his. As workers quietly began removing chairs and flowers, the beautiful wedding venue slowly transformed into a place of sadness. Lena looked around at the decorations she had spent months planning. Only hours earlier, they had represented hope. Now, they stood as silent reminders that even the most perfect plans could fall apart in a single moment. She had no idea that before the sun set that evening, a secret she had buried for 3 long years would finally be revealed. By late afternoon, the once beautiful wedding venue was almost empty. The laughter had disappeared. The music had stopped. Workers quietly packed away flower arrangements that had taken weeks to prepare. White rose petals covered the marble floor like pieces of a dream that had fallen apart. Guests offered Ethan a few words of comfort before slowly leaving. No one knew what to say. There were no words that could erase the pain of being abandoned on your wedding day. Lena stayed behind. She wasn't there because it was her job anymore. She stayed because she couldn't bear to leave Ethan alone. Inside the grand ballroom, Ethan sat quietly at a table overlooking the lake. His tuxedo was no longer neat. His bow tie hung loosely around his neck, and his eyes were fixed on the untouched wedding cake. Hours earlier, it had been the centerpiece of a celebration. Now it was a reminder of everything he had lost. Lena walked toward him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Without saying a word, she placed one in front of him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "I keep asking myself what I missed." He stared at the untouched coffee. "I thought she was happy." Lena looked down at her hands. "So did I." Ethan let out a quiet sigh. "I spent months planning our future." He smiled sadly. "But I never stopped to ask if she truly wanted the same future." Lena looked at him with compassion. "You trusted the person you loved. There's nothing wrong with that." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe, but trust only works when both hearts are honest." Silence filled the room again. Outside, the evening sun reflected across the calm lake, painting everything in soft shades of gold. After several minutes, Daniel entered the ballroom carrying a small cardboard box. "Lena," he said gently, "I found this in your office while packing. I thought you might want it." She smiled faintly. "Thank you." As she reached for the box, it slipped from her hands. Photographs scattered across the polished floor. Old event pictures slid in every direction. Ethan immediately bent down to help gather them. He picked up the first photograph. It showed the charity gala where he and Lena had first met. He smiled faintly. "I remember this night." He reached for another, then another. Every photograph included both of them: charity dinners, community projects, fundraising events, volunteer programs, years of shared memories. "You kept all these?" he asked. Lena froze. She hadn't meant for him to see them. "They're just memories from work," she replied quickly. As she knelt to collect the remaining photographs, a folded piece of paper slipped from between them and landed near Ethan's hand. It was old. The edges had become worn with time. Before Lena could reach it, Ethan picked it up. "What is this?" Lena's eyes widened. "No." She stretched out her hand. "Ethan, please." But he had already unfolded it. His eyes slowly moved across the first line. "Dear Ethan." He paused, then continued reading silently. "You'll probably never read this letter. There are some feelings I've carried for so long that I've convinced myself they'll always remain my secret. Somewhere between our first charity event and every project that followed, I fell in love with you." Ethan looked up. His eyes met Lena's. She couldn't hide anymore. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I never meant for you to find it," she whispered. "I wrote it years ago. I never planned to give it to you." Ethan carefully folded the letter. "You loved me." She nodded slowly. "For 3 years. And you never told me. I couldn't. You were happy. I wanted you to stay happy. So I buried my feelings. I thought that was the right thing to do." A tear slipped down Ethan's face. He remembered every late-night meeting, every charity event, every problem Lena had quietly solved without asking for recognition. She had always been there, not because she had to, but because she cared. "I've been so blind," he said quietly. Lena shook her head. "No, you were in love. Love makes all of us miss things." Ethan stood and slowly walked toward the ballroom windows. The sun was beginning to set over the lake. Its golden light filled the room. "I spent years searching for the perfect future," he said. "But maybe—" He turned toward Lena. "The person who truly cared about me was standing beside me the whole time." Lena smiled through her tears. "I'm not asking you to love me. I never expected anything. I only wanted you to be happy." Ethan walked closer. "You stayed today. After everything. You could have gone home. But you stayed." She nodded. "I couldn't leave you alone." For the first time that day, Ethan smiled. Not the excited smile of a groom waiting for his bride. Not the broken smile of a man reading a goodbye letter. It was a quiet, genuine smile filled with gratitude. He gently reached for Lena's hand. She looked surprised, but didn't pull away. "You've spent years helping other people find happiness," he said softly. "Maybe it's finally your turn." Lena's eyes filled with tears again. A year later, the same lakeside venue looked beautiful once more. There were no grand decorations. No extravagant celebration. Just close family, close friends, fresh white flowers, soft music, and two people who had learned that the strongest relationships are built not on perfect plans, but on honesty, friendship, and trust. As Lena walked toward Ethan beneath the same flower arch where heartbreak had once unfolded, she realized something she had never understood before. Sometimes, the worst day of your life becomes the beginning of your greatest blessing. Love cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed. And it cannot be built on pretending. But when two hearts choose each other with honesty, even a broken ending can become the start of the most beautiful story.